And then I will start the webinar.
All right. Good evening, everyone. As folks are getting into the Zoom and accessing that link, we will take a few minutes just to let everyone come into the Zoom. So please bear with us as we give this some time for people to get onto our Zoom for tonight. Good evening again. If you've just joined us, we are excited to welcome you back to the free professional development workshops for artists. We are going to give it just a minute or two more to allow folks to get onto the Zoom before we kick off with our content for this evening. And good evening again to everyone who's just joined us. I'm so excited to welcome everyone tonight. This is the final installment of our 2024 paid free professional development workshops for artists in this online workshop series. And we are so thrilled to have visitors with us, three co-presenters with us tonight who are going to be speaking about their practices, their work, and the careers that they have crafted over the years. As we jump into the evening, my name is Emily Womack. I'm co-founder and managing partner, excuse me. Sorry about that, of Dyson and Womack. Dyson and Womack is a partner with LA County Arts and Culture in delivery and development of the PAiD program. I'm joined tonight by my colleague, Allie Im. Allie will be sharing a bit more information about the PAiD program in just a moment. I also, as always, want to recognize that we are recording these sessions so that they will be free, available resources after this. So these will all be online for your viewing discretion, and we'll let folks know when those links are available. We will not be previewing upcoming workshops because this is our last one. So we will have move past that bullet point for tonight and go right into our content for the evening, Crafting a Career in Public Art. I will be introducing our three co-presenters a little bit more in just a few minutes. As always, again, Q&A for this is through the Q&A button. So there is a chat, but there is also a Q&A. So if you can look for the Q&A symbol at the bottom of your screen or at the top of your screen, however your Zoom is laid out, you can click on that, and that is where you can enter your questions at any time during the workshop tonight. So if you have questions that come up as our presenters are presenting, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. And when we get to that part of the evening, we will read through them and answer your questions. that is, I think, it for the agenda and any housekeeping for tonight. Again, we're just so thrilled to have everyone back for this final evening. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. I encourage you to look back at the catalog of workshops that we have done over the course of this program. Once they're available online, they really take a broad look at every element of applying to realizing, to managing, to working in communities, to designing, all of the different elements that go into this field we call public art. And tonight, as I mentioned, we are closing out this dialogue with a conversation with three incredible artists about the role of building a career in this field. So we're also going to share the county's land acknowledgement tonight. The County of Los Angeles recognizes that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tataviam, Serrano, Kizh, and Chumash peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants, past, present, and emerging, as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. I'll be silent for a moment so folks can read the rest. And I'll hand it over now to Allie to share a little bit more about the different elements beyond just the workshops that are part of the Public Artist and Development Program.
Hi, everyone. My name is Allie, and I'm a project manager at Dyson and Womack. I'm a little sad that this is the last time I'll be going over the program in this first series, but I'm happy to do so tonight. So PAiD Public Artists and Development is a program of the LA County Department of Arts and Culture, with funding by the Mellon Foundation, and it is a multi-year initiative that aims to advance the career growth and economic empowerment of underrepresented artists in LA County. One of the main goals of the program is to address the historical barriers that artists face when trying to enter public art, but it also deals with the wider challenges that artists encounter throughout their careers. And PAiD is made of multiple components, one being the professional development workshops. This is the final online workshop of this series, but we will have it again next year in 2025. Dates are TBD, but we will let everyone know who has attended when the new dates come out. It will also become available on the county's website. But the workshop series, it's a series of free workshops designed to provide valuable skills and resources to artists of all backgrounds and career stages who are interested in public art. So I highly recommend attending it again next year. The Artist Council. So this open call was launched last fall, and we actually just closed this first cohort. But the Artist Council open call will launch again early next year, early 2025. So I highly suggest signing up for the county's newsletter or subscribing to it so you can be notified when that comes out. And the Artist Council is a group of 8 selected artists commissioned to engage in a series of policy discussions and make recommendations to the county. They also get to create temporary public artworks all across LA County. And the apprenticeship. This is another open call for artists, and it launched a couple weeks ago, and the deadline to submit is November 7th. I'll put a link to the county's website with the RFQ in the chat for everyone to go to later on in the workshop. But the apprenticeship program is designed to address tough entry barriers to the field of public art by providing artists with the necessary training and support to successfully manage their first permanent public art project. The open call is open to visual artists working in any media as long as they have a primary residence in LA County. It's also open to artists who have not previously been commissioned for a permanent public art project by municipality or government agency program. Two cohorts of 5 artists will be selected, so 10 artists total. And once again, I'll put the link to the county's website for this in the chat. And then finally, we have the PAiD website. This is going to be a great resource for artists interested in public art. As Emily mentioned, the workshop recordings are going to become available on this website, and it'll also be available on the county's YouTube channel. It'll have other resources relative to the field as well, but we will notify all attendees when this website becomes live. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Allie.
Mhm.
So tonight we are looking at crafting a career in public art. We are going to have a discussion with 3 incredible artists who have agreed to join us tonight to share a little bit about their practice, but also about how they developed and built that practice, their experiences, and really just share that information as we seek to build a dialogue and understand across our community how we can be more supportive and more effective in building economic and sustainability and empowerment into our public art offerings. So I am going to introduce our 3 co-presenters. I am joined tonight by Kim Abelies. Kim is an artist who explores society, science, feminism, the environment, and so many other elements that have really focused a lot on our science and our natural history, working in museums and health departments. Kim has an incredible program where she works around air pollution, and that she'll probably share a little bit about, but I've been so impressed by her work and her commitment to these social issues and in being able to share that in a truly accessible and thoughtful way. Kim also received NEA projects through involved in her residency at the Institute of Forest Genetics. She has worked with a group of female prison inmates who fought wildfires. Kim is also a Guggenheim Fellow and has worked in numerous collections, including MoCA, LACMA, Berkeley Art Museum, and the California African American Museum. Her public art includes citizen seeds along the Park to Playa Trail. If folks have not seen that work, that is something you can actually go and see in person in Culver City. It's an incredible piece of work. And Walk a Mile in My Shoes, based on the shoes of civil rights marchers and local artists. And I know Kim is going to share a bit more about these works tonight. So I'll leave it there. But Kim, I'm a big fan of your work and just so excited to hear more about it in just a few minutes.
Thank you.
I'm also joined tonight by Michael Massenberg. Michael is also an artist, born and raised in San Diego and South Central in Los Angeles. He's a prominent artist in Inglewood, California. Michael was educated at California State University, Long Beach, and Otis College of Art and Design, where he began his career at Watts Tower Art Center. Shaped by the Watts Rebellion and 1992 LA Uprising, his work is drawings, paintings, collage, photography, digital media, assemblage. I mean, I don't know if there's much that Michael can't do. And he has done multiple public art commissions, including for Kaiser Permanente, Metro, the Department of Cultural Affairs in LA, and Kia Forum. He's also doing a new project for the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. I can't wait to hear more about that in the future, Michael. And he's received numerous grants and awards from the LA Lakers Youth Foundation, Art Matters, and the California Arts Council. He was also honored with a COLA Individual Master Artist by the City of LA's Department of Arts and Culture. His work reflects a commitment to social practice, community engagement, and artistic innovation. I think that's a thread you'll see across all of our artists tonight, is this true belief in the power and the importance of social practice, of community, and work that really resonates as such. Again, it's an honor to have you here tonight, Michael.
I'm an honor to be here. Thank you.
Our last co-presenter is Renee Petropoulos. Renee is an artist who has exhibited and created projects internationally for over 4 decades. You would not think that to see her. In 2019, she received the Santa Monica Artist Fellowship and the Stockholm International Grant and was an artist in residence in both the Palm Springs Museum of Art and the 18th Street Art Center. She has exhibited in Mexico City, co-organized Drive by Art, Los Angeles' edition. And her exhibitions include the Wend Museum, the Max Centennial Exhibition, and in-person shows at Mike Kelly Gallery. She has a 20 by 40-foot painting currently on display at the Delta International Terminal at LAX. I recently had a chance to go tour and see that work, and it is incredible. Folks are going through that. I hope you have a chance to stop and take a moment with that work. And I know that Renee is going to share a bit about it tonight as well. She has work in the collections of the Hammer Museum, MoCA, and many others. She is currently on the board of MOOW, I don't know that group, and the Fred Dewey Legacy. So apology if I didn't say that right. Her upcoming projects include public lectures and collaborations with Vincent Johnson at the Beyond Baroque's Mike Kelly Gallery in 2024, something not to be missed. Renee, thank you so much for participating tonight. We are going to hear a little bit from each of our presenters individually, and then we're going to open it up to some dialogue and discourse. So I am first going to hand it over to Kim and invite you to share a little bit more about your practice and your work.
Great, thank you. I thought these self-portraits were pretty perfect for the idea of public art and the physicality of all of it, whether it's about the paper or the tools or the pushing things around. Next. Yeah, if you can start this one, Allie.
Oh, is it a video?
Yeah, it's a video there.
Don't think the video will play.
Oh, no.
Okay. Well, that's okay. We'll go to the next. We'll be missing a little bit, but this
Okay.
is a video at the top too, if we have it. I actually picked 2 pieces, the most recent ones. Citizen Seeds was a commission that I received, and the basic idea was that I was to make these markers along the Park to Playa Trail, and that they might be places where people would meet up. I don't know how many of you know that trail. It's actually 13 miles. It runs from Culver City to the sea. And a lot of times when I start these projects, I will actually walk a trail like that. I was curious how people really use the path. And if you could go to the next slide. What I really love about the public art process is I like from the initial ideas to making the drawings and models, and the way it then becomes these 3-dimensional pieces of art in the environment. Next. So I selected 6 different seeds from indigenous trees. This is a sugar cone, a pine cone, and I was supposed to do 6 sculptures, but this one at the head of the trail, it seemed important to open up that seed so that it was really an entryway into the trail. So I ended up making 7 sculptures to be able to have this intro. The idea was for me that a lot of people use the trail, so it really wasn't the idea that I had to encourage people to go to that trail, but instead, people that use part of the trail, I wanted to encourage them to go further next time. So the path of the journey was not only a metaphor, but a physical thing about that trail and where it goes through the city. Next. So this is the other side of that example that I'm showing you. So in this case, the shape of the trail from Culver City to the ocean is actually done like the lines of a hand, as if we were palm reading. And so a lot of the features always have parts of the trail, but they use them in these different ways. That infinity sign that's kind of like a tattoo on that arm, again, becomes a symbol of that kind of rotational way that we are not only together as people, but when we go on our journeys. On the upper left, I wanted to show you, this is the metal work that I did to do the terrazzo inside these. For me, part of the charge that I love about doing public art is learning new skill sets. And, you know, these seeds are like 8 and 10 tons. So it's not like I was really even allowed to do that or had the facilities for it, but I always like to do the details that are in the pieces. So the next one. So on the upper left, that's more of that soldering and metal work that I was doing with all the terrazzo insets. On the lower left are the small models that I made for each of the 6 seeds. And on the right, I do like learning these processes. In each seed, it told you that you were here. And those were really taken from ink drawings that I made that were then cast in bronze. Next. There was to be a community component with this project, and this was actually during COVID, which made it very difficult to do it. I made these collage kits for people who signed up for the project, and through cut paper, they could make an image of the way they understood their journey in life. So people approached it really differently. Some of them are very direct. You know, there's one that's really great with Black Lives Matter, and some of them are about landscapes, and others are very abstract. And through a process of reducing the size of their collages, making them black and white, and then making molds, they were cast in concrete and then embedded in the seed. Everybody is credited for this in the bladder seed, and everybody got one of the casts to be able to keep it for themselves. Next. This video I don't think is working up in the upper left, but there was this funny thing that happened with this project. Some of the seeds at the head of where the stairs are in Culver City, it was decided we really had to install these at night because we didn't want all these pedestrians and hikers and people jogging to be around when these huge seeds were being placed on their sites. So it was like midnight when we started, but we had to have a lot of lights. And the irony that happened was so many people saw the lights up on the hill that we had lots of teenage groups and families that came up to see what was going on up there. So these seeds were so large, they're like 8 feet long, and they look really like spaceships going through the sky when this happened. Next. So another thing I really love about public art, you know, it's a very anonymous thing. It's not like going to a museum and you know who's in the show and you know you go there. People just happen upon it. And one of my greatest delights really is when I'm doing detail work on pieces like this, and lots of people come by, and I like to answer their questions or to hear their comments. And in the upper left, I made these patches for the project at the Institute of Forest Genetics that was mentioned. And I used to give them out when people would come up to me. And I really think there's sort of this good nature exchange that has to happen when we're doing these projects. Next. Google Maps, somebody had seen one of them and decided they wanted to see all of them, and they're now on Google Maps. And to me, this is like a highlight for this project, that it's so accessible. Next. So I'm going to run through this one too. This is Walk a Mile in My Shoes. It's very close to the other one that I just showed you. And if you go to the next slide, this is really a retreatment, I guess you'd call it, of two traffic islands. They happen to be a mile from each other. They're on Obama Boulevard. One's at Jefferson and one's at Martin Luther King Boulevard. Next. So, the community really wanted to have a statue of Martin Luther King. And I really had to think hard about a way to really represent the importance of him and all the people that worked around him. So that saying, walk a mile in my shoes, I started wondering about his shoes. And I came across from a church website all these shoes in this cabinet that are at one of the park services centers in Atlanta. I found out who owned these shoes. They were Zenona Clayton, who you see on the left. She had used the soles of the shoes to have them engraved on this walkway in Atlanta. And I contacted her and I said, I don't care if you have just these shoes or a lot of shoes. I want to come with my husband and we want to photograph them. So on the next slide, you'll see basically these are 60 pairs of shoes that were photographed with the name of the person. And these are all civil rights marchers that worked and, with Dr. King very closely and marched and so on. Next. Dr. King wore two pairs of shoes. One was for marching, which are more of the work boots, and the other one is the more dress shoes that he wore. So on each of the two sites, I did bronze replicas of each of the shoes. Next. Different historical photos are put in tiles on these 6-foot wide platforms. Next. On the Jefferson site, it's photographs of shoes of local activists. And in the next slide, you can see that there's also poetry. I often commission poets to be part of these projects. In this case, Beverly LaFontaine's poem is put on two sides so that you have to have two people to read it on each of the benches. Next. The shoes, really were borrowed by the different activists. Where somebody had passed away, I worked with their families, and through photographs, I would locate in different ways the same style of shoe that the person was wearing. Next. And this is the part I just love, like when everybody gets together after years of putting these projects together. And I think there's a final, next, I know, I see what's coming. So I just wanted to put this in because I don't think you usually know what's going to happen with these public art programs and projects. Idris Elba and his wife had seen the Walk a Mile in My Shoes. They have credited me for a project they did with Louboutin shoes with Walk a Mile. They donate all the money from the sale of those shoes to organizations. The other thing that happened, you can see on the right, school kids go there and they draw the shoes and then they set up whole programs based on learning about these different activists in the area. And the third thing that happened, private philanthropy group came and saw the piece and said, give me the list of all the people that are connected to a nonprofit. And each of those groups was given $3,000, no strings attached. So those connections and ripple effects with work is so exciting with these kind of projects. And I think that's it for me, except.
Pam, can I ask a couple questions? When were these pieces done?
I have 2014 for this one, and for the life of me, I don't know if, most of these pieces took a few years, right?
Yeah.
So I'm guessing I started a few years before so
Yeah.
they take a while. Yeah.
They're so beautiful. The subtlety in the terrazzo work in this. I just think the creases and the folds, there's such an artistic beauty and
Mm.
quality in these photographs. What I love about this work as well is that oftentimes with public art, you have to work in such solid and permanent materials that you can lose some of the softness of a piece. And through these photographic representations and the way that you've worked with the concrete and the material, there's such subtlety and such gentleness as well. It's really beautiful to see. And I think that shows a real mastery of materials. I look forward to maybe hearing a little bit more about your journey of working with materials and processes. You can clearly see that that is a very important aspect of your work.
Yeah, thank you.
Michael,
Yeah.
oh, one final image of
And
it here.
cleaning.
Oh,
I also sweep.
is that you?
Oh, yeah, I go and clean these things up all the time.
That's amazing. That is not usually part of the artist's responsibilities. We should make that clear. Um, and I love that you do that. And I'm sure that, both of these works have been adopted by the communities that they're in. Um, but that is a great note to highlight about the importance of maintenance. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about longevity in the discussion part of tonight. But I love this photo, and the artist's work is never done. Okay, Michael, I'm going to hand the mic, so to speak, over to you. Just let me know when you want me to advance your slides.
Okay. I want to give a little background. Like, you can stay right, hold that, and then give a context.
Great.
I got involved in public art in probably about the mid '90s, and at that time, Metro was working with a lot of artists, not only in conceptualized but also fabricating. So I had an opportunity to fabricate with work under the artists of like Charles Dixon on his Metro line, also with the late Richard Wyatt, who passed away this year, on multiple of his projects. And so what that did, it kind of gave me a lot of fuel in regards to what the possibilities were. And also too, I helped install Joe Sam's project in Watts. I haven't done work like that since then because, but it gave me a unique experience in regards to that. So coming to this, at the time I was working at the Watts Towers Art Center, working under the management of Mark Greenfield, and so I was chosen to do a project in Kansas City. It was a jazz museum that they were building, and it was called 18th and Vine, which was a old jazz district in Kansas City. And so what I love about this project is, like, even though I knew a little jazz, but I wasn't a jazz head. But what I did appreciate, I was able to dive deeply into the genre of jazz, and it gave me a whole more appreciation, not only just for jazz, but just on historical things. Because in school, I wasn't interested in the history. It didn't reflect anything that was around going on in my community and stuff. So projects like this enhances it even more. And so this project is in the interior of what's called a Blue Room, and it's a museum during the day, and in the Blue Room, when it's ready to start cooking, they have their concerts and stuff like that. So it was great to have this piece done there. And so I had done a few painted murals before, but in this case, I did painted, also did three-dimensional fabrication of instruments, like saxophone and trumpet and stuff like that. And so had an opportunity to fabricate that through Charles Dixon Studio and stuff, because he had capabilities of working all kind of materials. And so I started building these multi-layers of canvases, and also some parts were elevated. So not only did I cover the main players like Count Basie, especially Charlie Parker, who were both rooted in Kansas City, but also it was great to be able to shed light on the local musicians and singers who may not be nationally known, but were prominent in the development of that culture in jazz during that point in time. So that was really a great opportunity for me to kind of open me up in that regards. So and this was done in 1995. Next. This project, I'm a longtime resident in, man, I've been in Inglewood for quite a while now. So this is one of the projects, it was called the Inglewood Growing Artist Project. It was the first one that was done there in 2014. This is the Inglewood Main Library. So one of the things I love to do is tell stories, or to be current events, historical, or about the future. In this case, I had a little bit of everything involved in this stuff. So this library is, I don't think there's too many libraries this size. This have like 4 floors. And so inside the lobby area, there's this big open space, and I wanted to create my pieces there. So here you have what I do. I would like not only do my research and stuff, but also I also talk with people, and also I get interesting kind of things. I got research information from the library, and one of the things that intrigued me was there was this postcard by a resident going back into the I forget what decade now, but what this person did was writing a letter inviting President Roosevelt to come to her community. And I guess at the time it was kind of normal. Yeah, I guess you can write to the president, and sometimes you get responses. So I was fascinated because what I also like too, I like to see handwriting. And because of technology and things we do now, we're seeing less and less of handwriting. To me, handwritten things is art in itself, especially for some people who number of people who I know that no longer here. Sometimes their writing is only as really personalized, you know. And so I took the letter and I enlarged it like this gigantic letter, and had the cursive writing going across. And then I start adding like all the different elements of the early parts of Inglewood in regards up to the present time. And the present time have like the shuttle and going back to the beginning as far as of the land of when we're standing on today, acknowledging that. So through our Native American families. So I start really getting as again, I never did like history and stuff in school, but I love doing histories and stories like this of everyday people. Next. This is another fun piece. This is a collaboration with one of my working partners is Robin Strayhorn. This is at the Rosa Parks station, and this was done in the early 2000s. And so in working together, we wanted to do something. Well, it was easy to do something about like civil rights and Rosa Parks. But the other thing was looking at like how can we make these seating areas comfortable and also make it artistic and also a little bit interesting, because so what we did is like we fabricated all the tile work, and then also too, one of the things that I did too to add a little flair to the color pieces, we had like the more of the sepia color pieces. And that's why I focus on creating pieces about the actual people in the community. Some are known and some are unknown. Because a lot of times when we talk about civil rights, we think about the famous names. So I wanted to focus on the local, especially in Los Angeles area, and have like going through old photographs of people who were doing different things in regards to fighting for their rights and stuff. So we did a series of 4 benches, and their front and back in regards to where the tile is. And the other thing I love about public art is projects like this, because it can be always be there forever. Because I know even during the renovation of recently with the Rosa Parks station, uh, it was beautified and it looks great, but our benches are still there. we're praying for it to always still will be there, because it's also an area where people sit where they catch the bus and then also go upstairs and go up on the metro. Next. This was done in like 2014. Madison Square Garden had bought the Forum, and so one of the things what happened with a lot of the different cities is, like, including Inglewood, they would have a percent program, and so I was working with the management team, like Barbara Goldstein and Leslie Elwood, and another fellow artist, Gail McCall. Gail did like a seating, and what I did 2 pieces. I'm only going to show one today. But the one I want to show is this. You see these little emblems. They're like parts of the instrument. So what I want to do is, like, the Forum is known obviously for sports, especially music. Almost anybody who's ever been considered the greatest of all time has probably played at the Forum, sung, danced, everything. There's been a lot of historical. So during the day around the parking lot, the community jogs around the parking lot. It's like, and so we came up with the idea about creating these emblems on the ground as markers. So when they jog, you see different parts of instruments and stuff like that. I even had a section where it said, like, when you've gone a quarter mile, or half a mile, or a mile. And each one are like throughout the whole parking lot on outside parameter. And that was one, I really love this project because we talk about public engagement. And so with that, we did 54 emblems, and there's a process called Decamark, similar to when they're doing like using the same material and stuff when they're doing like street dividers and lines and stuff like that. So we decided to obviously do this circular method, and we're called circle sounds. Next. This is a piece I did for, this was probably about, yeah, I think it was 2014. Wow. And yeah, this is Farmdale Station. This is like, this is right near Dorsey High School and also the park. And so this particular project came up actually at the last minute. It wasn't even planned to be part of the line. It goes from, like, from near the USC area, always going to Crenshaw. Now it's been extended with the new line now. That was just, so now you can go even further now. And so I wanted to, again, I love to do things about communities and let people know that, even if it's hundreds of years from now, in my mind, I say, like, they would know who was here because it's been documented, and you see the image and stuff. So I want to have that kind of thing. This was done in mosaic design with a fabricator out of Mexico. And so I did a series of 12 panels, front and back. And each different one had like different scenes. Like there's one scene that had like some of the alumni of Dorsey High School. Like, for instance, give an example, like Dale Davis, who taught a lot of the students at Dorsey, and also him and his brother started the Brockman Gallery. So you have, which was very significant during the 70s, going to the 90s. So I'll pick out a few people here and there and stuff. And then also too, I also included like what was called the African marketplace. There's a scene where there's an African marketplace, was really at the time was, now there's a lot of festivals all over, but at that time it was the festival to go to. And so I have like a scene of that, and I have, so, and also just like, again, I have like friends of mine who live in the community, have them pose for me, and I included their portraits in their piece. And I wanted to cover from the morning time up to the evening, so you would see like each different panel at different times of the day. Next. This is a recent piece for Kaiser Hospital. And this was completed this about, I think it was like January, February. And so I collaborated with 2 other artists, Ace Bourne and Mr. B Baby. And so over the course of over a year and a half, something like that, we worked on these ideas in regards to how to create peace that was going to really speak to the community. And so the images you see now are actually real people, kids, you know, teenage stuff like that. And we wanted to, and so what was good is when we had our opening, we had some of the ones who were kids back then are now adults and they see themselves in the piece. The piece is really big and huge. Huge. It's like it's on right off near off like 103rd and Success, right by the park, and it's so humongous that you can stand back and really see it from different angles and stuff. And so that was a joy project to work with. Next. This is the most recent piece. It was one of 7 artists that was chosen to do a public art piece for the Intuit Dome. And so this is a piece here that I have is on Century, actually it's on Prairie. This is the Prairie Street going by and the corner of Century. And so the piece I have is like 25 feet by 100 feet. And it's printed on porcelain steel. What I love about that is like one of the things that as public artists, we always wonder about how our work would last through time, either through weather or to, you know, tearing down of a building and that kind of thing. And we would hope that that the work will last to, you know, for a long time. Like when I go, like talking with our colleagues, we were talking earlier, I talked about the trips going, like I said, like Europe or other countries and stuff like that and other places. And they have work that's been revered for forever. And I know that because we're in the United States, we have a different mindset about like building and constructing and putting new stuff and get rid of the old stuff. So hopefully we have more and more work that will be honored and be able to stand the test of time. This piece is called Cultural Playground, and I wanted to incorporate the community that's here and also in the past in regards to different activities from sports things. Since this is a entertainment and sports complex, I didn't want to do it straight obvious. I wanted something that was very cultured and very community oriented. And so I focused on things like, for instance, I put like a drum in, you know, there's actually a drum workshop in Inglewood. And so I wanted to use that, which is, you know, very popular in not only here in Inglewood, but also in other parts, especially like Leimert Park. And then also too, when I think about, I'm a big basketball fan. And so I feel like when I think about basketball with a player dribbling ball and movements, I also think about like dancing because it's very similar. There's some players who like using awe about their movements and call and response in regards to what's in front of them and stuff like that. The same thing with dancers and stuff like that, the movement and the flow and stuff things. So I want to have that kind of overlay in regards to the relationship to each other, as opposed to just sticking something in and just for the sake of. I wanted to have a blending. And so, like for instance, I had like 2 kids. They're like in the park. They're running like they're, you know, so they're going to the finish line. So I want to make sure that, you know, that it's kind of like really related to like the everyday people and stuff. And then I do have like the athletes. I have the basketball player. I have the soccer player. I have the tennis. But also too, I have the dance as far as for the festivals they have every year. I have like part of the marching band for one of the high schools and stuff like that. So that is, I guess that's it. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. It's amazing to see your work translate across all of these materials and mediums. And I think one of the artistic and aesthetic qualities still translates, even, you know, from mosaic to steel. It's so powerful to see how you bring that quality into each of these mediums. And also the role of collaboration is so strong in your work, as we've seen from even the get-go of where you kind of formed relationships early on in the making space, but then continuing to collaborate across the years, it speaks to that nature of public art in such a real and profound way. So thank you for sharing. I'm going to now hand it over to Renee. Renee, please share a little bit about your work and your background, and then we'll open it up to a group dialogue.
Thank you so much. I only chose two works, and they're both within, well, one is within the last 10 years. The other's a little older, but the conditions made it more contemporary, and it's something I would like to talk about. Kim, is how many actions you have over the years. Any concerns kind of overlap. My mother taught at Dorsey High, so that was really interesting to hear. My studio's in Inglewood as well. There's these kind of connections that operate in so many different ways. So this is a work called Flower Tower, Bouquet in what is it's a very thin structure. I think you can see it. There are two sides. So one side, the one with the flowers, the vertical kind of tower looking item, face the street. So from your car, that's what you would see. If you're walking, there's a very long walkway, you would see this other side with the grid that is mirrored stainless steel. And what happens, and what I was interested, is the residential complex. It was a percent from art. The flowers are each representative of nations. So since the early 90s, and I probably would have to credit working on a metro station that brought my attention to how nations represent themselves, how images on coins show off a country. Are they animals? Are they flora, fauna? Are they the heads of well-known leaders? That kind of thing. And my early work in the metro was concentrated on that because it was in an area, El Segundo, and El Segundo was the head of, or the center of, the aerospace industry at that time, which was the center of the Cold War ammunitions. So many of you are listening probably didn't live through the Cold War in the United States. And what happened, and I bring this up for a purpose, is that when I began that project, which is, you don't see here, was in 1989. 6 months later, the Berlin Wall came down, and it was the end of the Cold War. But in that 6 months, the artists involved in the project, and myself in particular, because I chose to work in relationship to the aerospace industry and their sort of centrality to making arms, it ended, and there was a kind of confusion of like, I made this whole project, it isn't in place yet. It's going to be 6 years before it's going to be actually fabricated and in place. How does that work? Like how do I reconcile that? How do I think about it? And the neighborhood there changed completely to service, restaurant, movie theaters, et cetera, took over many of the former aerospace businesses. But what came out of it for me was really thinking about representation and how through various means we can represent people, nations, whole sets of ideas. So going up the stairs at that metro station, I created a set of these, what looked like, they were stainless steel sort of tiles, and they were in the shape of the city of El Segundo. And what I did was I flipped them backwards and forwards, and they created a kind of pattern that pointed to maybe, let's say, a Navajo rug, or something that has symbolic value. And in each of inscribed on each of the tiles was a name, a first name of a person who worked on the station. So it could have been Siobhan or Barbara or John, those kinds of names, just first names, no last names, but they became this way that anyone walking through the station could identify potentially with being that person. There were also the designations that we have in our lives, meaning a niece, an uncle, a mother, a father. So all of those were kind of combined. And what that led to was 40 years of developing mapping situations. And I have continued working in that arena. If I, kind of turn my camera, you'll see some of the maps here in my studio right now. And that this idea came from that moment, working in the public sector. The flowers, most people don't realize that every nation in the world is represented by a flower. And the flowers become a kind of, for me, this bouquet or this grouping is completely wrong if you really think about it. Those flowers are not that size. And I don't mean that they're big. They're not that size in relationship to one another. A dahlia is not the same size as a calla lily or a rose or an orchid. So they're equalized. And that is very intentional. It's the same thing that happens in my maps that I kind of just let you glance at. All the countries are the same size in relationship to the paper. So the tiniest country of room on a paper, and the largest country shrinks in a sense to the size of the paper. So it is about scale. What interested me here was that it was a residential complex with a lot of, or very expensive housing. So it ran a kind of wide range. And when you move through the space, you can see on this side with the mirrored section, it across the street. The entire sculpture disappears. It melts literally into the structure. It's an aspect of this work by that I measured the trajectory of the sun and when those things would happen. And it became, let's say, fascinating to me that a 28-foot tall sculpture could literally disappear, and it is symbolic. So the plaque tells you what from Egypt, the Arabs, the United States. It's hard to see in this another slide where you see the lily, which is actually two different countries. The top one is from Brazil. It's a orchid. Yeah, here they are: Egypt, India, Iraq, United States, Brazil, Ethiopia, and Mexico. Those are the dominant groups in the city of Santa Monica. So the largest demographics were those groups of people. The city didn't want me to go into that. They were worried about that. So I included it in the title that it would name them, then you would have to sort of sort out this relationship. So each flower represents one of those countries. And QR code allows you to watch the video of how the sculpture was installed, and how it all came to be. Because it's kind of the middle of the night. You have cranes set up on the side of the road, and they start to drop, your sculpture in, and you're unwrapping it, and it's a whole kind of, it's very exciting, and thrilling, and that's maybe an interesting part of the of making these things, and just another kind of representation. In the early 20th century, that type of sculpture, this type of shape, was part of an agitprop movement that started in Europe, and it was objects that were made to be carried through the streets. But they kind of 3 dimensions, and this is a kind of version of one of them. So you can see that it's, a tower that goes up, but it's completely flat, and the depth of the sculpture is quite, so its vantage point is and it's on a walkway where you walk through. So I was thinking very much of the idea of a parade or a gesture that lent itself to that kind. And agitprop.
Renee, I think we're losing
active-
you a little bit. Your audio is coming in and out a little bit, but I also just wanted to say, we've probably got about maybe 2 more minutes for the presentation. So if you want to go to your next piece, we can go into our final dialogue together.
Okay. This work, and I'm showing you how it leads up to seeing the work. So if we go through to this one, now, could you hear me? Yeah. Oh, there. So you're going up the stairs, or you're going up the escalator, and you end up seeing this work. It's entitled "Just What Is Your Position for a Corporation?" And it was originally, it's 40 feet across, it's 20 feet high. And this is at the Delta stairs or escalators, you encounter it. It was originally commissioned in 1997. I painted it the full year of 97 to 98. I was pregnant the entire time. So the entire time I painted it, 9 months, 6 days a week, I did. And I mentioned that because there are several aspects of that interest me. And one is based on the shape of a Ralph's Market sign. So it's the same as one of these big market logos. It was commissioned for Fox Studios in, I guess that's, what is that area? Century City. I guess it's the edge of Century City. And watched over by the tycoon Rupert Murdoch. He and his wife were very interested in this being the central feature of news at the Fox. And I had to think really hard about that, and really like, what did that mean to make the work as a commission in that sense, when you're very close to a difficult person that is highly visible and known much more now than then. It's actually not as known then in 1997. But what he had just done is he had bought the airspace over China and India. And I didn't exactly understand that, so I
Renee, I think we're really struggling.
air
losing you again.
Oh no.
I know.
Should we try? So we're not hearing what I'm saying? Is that what's happening?
It's cutting out kind of every few sentences and we're losing about a sentence or two.
Oh, okay.
Like to try to maybe go out and come back in, you're welcome to.
Well, I don't want to take up too much time. I just want to point out in something that I wanted to talk about. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm kind of leaning in. Maybe that helps. Maybe it became very site specific. And their construction, it's a macro, micro, we're zoomed out the orbit area here. I hope you can see my cursor. I don't know if you can. Is a 15th century conception of the orbits of the planets that was drawn. So that is set up in relationship to a very close-up version of the cells in a body, these kind of blobs. So we're going in and out, and the movement across the work is very dramatic, so that the perspective changes depending on where you're standing. So just what is your position emphasizes one's political position, one's physical perspective in looking at the work, and very much pointing to this particular moment in time, sandwiching 500 years ago with the present time, where someone is thinking about space or air being of value, of monetary value. The point that or why I'm bringing it as well, or showing it today rather than some other one spot that then 20 years later made a huge change in the building. I think Mike mentioned for something to last. And since it
Renee, I'm gonna, we're losing you quite a bit. So, and we need to,
God.
I know,
Okay.
I'm so sorry. I think we'll pick up some of those questions about longevity and place and relationship as we go through this. And so I'm gonna end the screen share because I wonder if maybe that'll help too, because I think it's a connection issue, not we can hear you, it's just your connection is coming in and out. But we'll see how, maybe it'll go a little better without the screen share on. But I also just want to say thank you for sharing that work. And I think what came across and what is very clear in that, both the examples that you shared, is the importance and the impact of global, macro and micro, like looking large and looking at the impact that that has, even from a personal level to a community level, and then seeing the larger forces at play within the world and trying to create work within those contexts that can exist for decades. That's such an incredibly challenging way of operating and working, and there's sort of beautiful pieces that clearly have found homes that understand and respect and honor that contribution. So thank you for sharing that. It actually leads me to kind of where I wanted to start our dialogue tonight, which was, I think we've seen a lot of, through all of your work, what is likely some of the inspirations that led you each to working in this field, which is, it's clear there's a desire to be in dialogue, to be in community, to lift up voices, to lift up narratives, to lift up histories and individuals. And you see that immediately in the works that you guys have all shared tonight. And I imagine that is some of the impetus that drove you to working in public art, because of the platform that it offers for that type of connection. But I also imagine there are things you did not anticipate as you entered that space. And as we talk about, building a career, I wonder if you could look back and maybe even reflect forward about some of the challenges and the things that you maybe weren't as, you know, we've talked about like installing overnights and, you know, collaborating in ways that you hadn't anticipated and working with materials you hadn't anticipated and all of those things. But I'm curious if there are some things that you would want to share with our audience and maybe folks who are entering this space about like not just the inspiration that makes public art unique, but maybe some of the challenges and things that you've encountered across your career that have also made working in this space unique. And I will.
I mean, I could just start. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. We lost you straight away, Renee.
Field came from. Oh God. Okay.
Is it possible maybe to go out and come back in and see if maybe the connection resets? Because I think it's getting a little worse.
Okay.
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 And while Renee rejoins us, Michael and Kim, I'm happy for you guys to continue that conversation as you may like.
I'll let Kim go first.
Well, okay, so I actually came to public art really through installation art. You know, like the first examples that I was able to give for any kind of, you know, RFP, RFQ, you know, was things from a gallery, but you know, installation. So things built and complicated and so on. I think the thing, I mean, challenges, there's always challenges. I think even the longevity of projects is probably difficult for some people. What was coming through my mind when you asked that actually is that, you know, a lot of artists work in series, right?
Mhm.
And that's really related to gallery work. Pretty much, right? So this is a little different in the sense that any projects I've done, and you can see from, you know, Michael's work too, and Renee, these are deep dives into subjects and artworks that require very rigorous not only investigation and research and finding this and that, and what are the unusual connections that weren't apparent at first, but a kind of willingness to really almost write a book. It's like that.
Mm. Mm. You see that very much in the works that you both shared, for sure. That lifelong learning.
Yeah, one of the things for me is like I kind of joke about it, but I'm still serious. I feel like I said, if an artist was interested, like for me, you have to have a higher calling, bigger than all the other stuff, the business part, the budgets, the uh, the uh, the committees, you know, and then you work with the agencies and stuff, and then the community, and that can be very daunting for artists who make their work is really personal. But how I was able to kind of cross that path is that after '92, after the uprising, I was trying to figure out, and I was just getting started. I said my neighborhood is in a mess, but I said like I do art. Like, what does that mean? I don't want to just make a picture, just be making. And so I had a lot of, you know, that was a time for me to do a lot of some soul searching. I actually spent a lot of time mentioning like the Watchtowers Art Center. So one of the first people I went to was John Otterbridge, the director at the time. He was very helpful, and also Charles Dixon. So between those two, one someone got answers for them, but it let me give an opportunity for me to kind of find myself within what was available, you know. And so and being that both of them have been around before me in the art thing in the community, because it wasn't like they were like, you know, international art stars. They were like they're being revered now because of their work is far reaching beyond it than the work they create, but the community they created. So I wanted to kind of I was fortunate because having those tools is the reason why I'm probably doing it now after all these years. Um, and I think that what's also important is that for artists who are interested, to be in dialogue with the artists who are in it and kind of like because some artists is not for them because it's a lot of little intangible stuff. But if you have something that's driving you, I have to say this. I want to say this to the largest, most profound audience possible in the public, where in a gallery or museum may not be seen by only for a selected few. So it just all these kind of dynamics which can be a challenge, but I think that the rewards when it's done in its proper space and the opportunity to really grow can be really great for everyone involved.
I really appreciate you lifting up the role and importance of community within that, though, as being a thing that allowed you to maybe navigate some of those early projects. I think that is one of the goals of the PAiD program, actually, is to start to support and build a network and a community in different ways that can provide resources and support. And it's great to hear an a real life example of that being a catalyst to work. Renee, let's test your connection. I hope it's a little better.
I hope so. I don't know. It's,
I also
I'm not sure. Jump in. Is it?
I also had a thought that if this isn't working, I wondered if perhaps you could also try maybe on your phone if you're on a laptop, and maybe that might be a better connection.
Yeah.
Because it does.
Is it still failing? I can't tell.
It is. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Okay, I'll give it a shot. I do have Zoom on my phone.
We're all connected
guess-
these days.
Yeah.
Well,
I didn't get to too much anyway, so maybe. Okay.
yeah.
John Outerbridge is in the Walk a Mile piece I did,
Mm.
and I still have his shoes.
Oh,
I know. I mean, the real
I'll
shoes.
let the family know because I'm in contact with the family.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
So
because I tried to give him back a few times before I passed,
okay.
Yeah.
I'll let them know because I see him from time to time.
Yeah, John Outerbridge, you were talking about like individuals that kind of boosted you forward. And he's the one actually that said to me, and early on when I was doing public art, he'd go, Kim, when they're getting ready to pour the concrete, just go there and say, can you pour some over here too? Like just like, and I
Yes.
swear to God, I don't know if you could always do that, but it really made me see that when buildings or anything are put up, it's just a bunch of people working. We're
Yes.
all working, and kind of eager to help each other. So
Yeah.
that's a good vibe to kind of hook into.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Very, very important. And that's why having artists who are open, like even now, there's a number of younger artists who I work with and stuff. In fact, one of the artists I did a restoration for a mural at the Watch Towers that was done by Alonzo Davis as a tribute to John Outerbridge. So I had two young people work with me. Patrick Johnson, who works for the Watch Towers, and Allison. And she and I just saw her at the jazz festival. And so I refer her to I can't remember who it was, but they were looking for young artists who wanted to be on a restoration team for the restoration of Noni Alabisa's mural, "Freedom Can't Wait," which was the face.
Yep.
And I saw her, and she was able to work on a project. She showed me pictures. So
Nice.
so saying all that is like, and she's really excited. So all those kind of things are kind of go hand in hand, is where we can, when you're able to touch on something that's so important to the community and to the artists who created it, and be able to empower that, whether you're an assistant or you're lead artist.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, I'm just getting Renee the link over to her, so just bear with me 1 second.
Okay.
And then there we go. So we'll get her, see if we can get her back in, but I'm going to go ahead and pose another question to you both as we're working on that. We talked a little bit about materiality and changing your process from one medium to another to, hey,
Hi.
oh my goodness, so much better.
Oh, good.
Yay. Okay, you're back. All right. I was just about to pose another question, so I will do that and we can kind of use this as maybe, a way to kind of put in some, give you guys a chance to kind of put in some final thoughts and context. So we've talked a lot about collaboration, and we've also talked a lot about materials and communities. But I'm curious, how have relationships between other fellow artists, relationships with fabricators, relationships with commissioners that you have worked with over time have paved a way that has allowed you to feel like you can continue to do projects? Like, what are some of those things that were very fundamental to being, because we hear so much in our end about, I had a horrible experience, I'm never going to do public art again. Or I lost money and I'm never going to do public art again. And you three are examples of folks who have come and encountered challenges, but have overcome and have moved through and have returned to this space and worked in it. And I wonder if you could share a little bit about what are the things that have allowed it to be a space that felt you could continue to work in, that supported your practices alongside that, and whether that was relationships, whether that was, relationships with makers, relationships with commissioners, or if it was a drive and a passion, or all of the above. But what it was, that kind of mix that gave you the ability to continue on in this space and in this field. And Renee, if you're comfortable, we can start with you, since you've been unable to speak about some of the other questions.
Well, I would first say that the people that you mentioned, the other artists, the facilitators, the architects, that is a community, and they're often left out. That is a fundamental community to those of us who work in public art. And my first, let's say, experience was all 5 artists who were working on the Metro line. We worked in the same studio. We were given a studio by Metro, and it was in the neighborhood where our stations were. And that's how I spent 6 months with Charles Dixon. I spent 6 months with Daniel Martinez. I spent 6 months with Richard Turner. And what that did is we were a community. It was 4 guys and me. Carl Che was the 5th person. And we spent 6 months, pretty much every day of the week in that studio that was situated in El Segundo. And it was an unusual and really different world. And we were given an architect. Many of us, a couple of people could read plans. Many of us could not. And we were taught how to read elevations, all the different architectural drawing styles by this guy who was hired specifically to work with all 5 of us. And we formed a community. We ate lunch together, we ate dinner together, we hung out, we were just together constantly. And from that, Daniel Martinez and I went on to collaborate for the next decade. And we worked on several projects across the country together. And so you become a community that way as well. It's not just, the area that you work in. And because I was working, I think I mentioned, in this aerospace land, the community was what the work was, meaning what people in that community were doing. It informed Carl to a great degree. He made these crazy, I don't know, things that attracted outer space or something, you know, like these big vehicles on top of the station. And Daniel made a hand that threw a paper airplane. And I made all these symbols, these things, 6 of them hanging off the station, about progress and development, how a nation puts itself forward. And Charles worked with the butterfly, the Mariposa, which was the name of the street that he was working on. And we were all dealing with these things that originated there, were there, but were, I don't want to, they weren't abstract, but all interested in how things could be discussed without being, let's say, illustrative.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Michael or Kim, would either of you care to share a little bit too? You're going to pass it off to Michael this time since he gave it to you first.
And we're all a team. We're all family.
Exactly.
Well, that is so important. Like I said, as the audience we hear now, they're starting to hear these repeat names, this overlap, because not everybody, like I said, may want to do it, but the ones that are doing it, it's almost like we have to do it. Because if not us, then who? And then when another representation comes in that doesn't have the sensibilities and the nuances, then we'll end up with like a friend of mine used to call plop art, you know, which was fulfill a requirement, just drop it in the center, and that's it. But when Renee was mentioning about the Metro, that was very significant. It's like they Metro is different now. Now the artists can choose a fabricator, and they don't have to break a sweat. They just provide the artwork design prepared and give it to the fabricator. But back then, there was blood, sweat, and tears, and so I appreciate that, because then I have both worlds now, because I was there at that beginning part there as an assistant, and then now I'm in a new era where now everything is digitized. You got different elements, and you don't have to break a sweat, you know. Because even on this last project, it was kind of unusual. I'm used to painting or doing mosaics or a ceramic tile, at least something. I just had to do digital files, similar to what I did with the Farmdale station, because that's what pretty much everybody did at the time. So yeah, it's something that's very manageable, but that's why you need the right artists around you for anyone who's interested. Without that, you'll drop it like a hot potato. The first sign of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I just say this, Michael, as well,
Mm-hmm.
is that you have to be prepared to have an idea
Yes.
and put it forward, and then wait many years for it to actually be real.
That too.
And that's not for everyone.
Yes.
To actually have to kind of nurse it along slowly over a really potentially long period of time.
Yes. True.
You know, I think that's something else.
Kim, I know you've worked a couple of times with different agencies, and I'm curious if you have any thoughts about some of what makes a good relationship with a commissioning agency, where you feel supported and able to kind of work with them, or if there are things that you would recommend artists to look out for and who they might choose to work with.
Okay. Well, you know, project manager at any institution is just so important. Pat
Mhm.
Gomez was on here before. I'll
Mhm.
tell you, she was always so conscientious about the way things were gonna go next and next and next. And, you know, both of us as hard workers, it just, you know, with big, you know, problems that arise, they have to be solved, and you don't like just go, oh, poor me, you know, there's a problem, what do I do? You know, it's got to be really forward thinking. I was also thinking in terms of what community is. I was thinking about community as we know it when we say we're going to go to a community meeting. And, you know, sometimes I've been to community meetings and they'll be talking about the work I'm presenting, and criticizing this or that. And I want to say, like, you guys do know I'm sitting right here, right? It's like, and I'll tell you, I have cried a little off and on. I will be the first to say that. But here's what I would like to say. The stuff that I have heard that really got under my skin. I mean, just really like, I didn't know what to do at the time, what to say. That is the very stuff that made my work better in the end. Because it was like, it's like anything, you know, when somebody maybe criticizes you, you know, if it's really bugging you, it's like you didn't solve it yet and you got to figure it out. And as much as it's kind of painful to do it, you got to do a lot of like, you know, I don't know, there must be a name for it. Deep work. I'm going to do deep work. It's like the beauty of kind of breaking through the sound barrier of that is just breathtaking.
Yeah.
And you can't do that by yourself, really. I mean, you kind of could try, but all this feedback back and forth is just profound. And I love it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's something really fascinating about that. I did a project for a juvenile detention center, it was prison in Alameda County. And this was before I received the commission. I mean, I presented, and I was fortunate. I actually asked for access to some of the teenagers that were incarcerated. And I met with boys, I met with girls, because they're separated. And what happened is I talked about my ideas that had a lot to do with abstraction, like things that you couldn't see exactly. They were forms that were representations. What I was taking turned it into geometric syllables. So it became code. It was all coded. And I had proposed that I would make a booklet that went with it that would let everyone who came to visit know what that was. The kids flipped and loved it beyond belief. They were so excited because they told me that they work in codes because the guards figure out what they're saying and they invent new codes about every 6 months. And they thought it was the best project because it actually fulfilled their ideas. I would never in a million years have guessed that. Never to really understand that, oh my God, this abstraction is actually working in my favor. Because an alphabet is an abstraction, and we don't always think of it that way. But when you put it together, it means something. So yeah, that was one of my revelations from the community that I was working with.
I love that. I also really appreciate the call to attention of the somewhat thick skin that you might need to have when you're putting your ideas out there on a level that is a different playing field. And I'm going to bring in I'm going to shift it up a little bit and bring in some of the questions from the community that has been listening and, allow us to kind of keep this dialogue as we go through that. And Allie, if you would like to bring Pat in, you can.
Okay.
But we had a couple of questions that I think kind of mirror some of the discussion points we were going to talk about. So we'll see how, bringing those in might bring that along. So one of the first questions was just, do you each all also have studio practices separate from your public art careers? And how do you balance doing that? Is that hard? Is that different ways of working? How, yeah.
I'd say just to start before they inform one another. I think I began with an interest or an application to make a project, my first one in 1989. And it was precisely because I felt that the two things intersected and I could never, let's say, make a work of the size I wanted or address the particular audience in the way that I wanted, just in my studio. But then, as I mentioned, in the difficult communication time, I don't know if anyone heard, but what I created at the metro station completely informed the studio project that I still am working on here. So I wouldn't have come to this project, I don't think, if I hadn't already started working on something in that situation. So for me, it is a dialectical back and forth conversation. And some things, I make by hand in a different way, and some things are translated and work in a different, but I don't make the same things, but I feel they're infused with the same attitude.
Mm-hmm.
I can definitely relate to that because I do have that and this. What also too helped me, like said, in regards to when I'm doing my personal work, I don't have any rules. I don't have no, like, I'm sort of like, okay, I'm gonna experiment, I'm gonna play with this. I can be able to do that. And so what happens is once I find something that's workable, some that could be translated for a future project because I already had done that. And people might have already been in my studio or they bought a piece that have this kind of thing happening. And then if it's something that's organic and it organically ends up in my presentation, it's felt because it wasn't like I'm doing this because this is the way it's supposed to be done. I'm doing this because this is part of who I am. And so I guess in some way we probably make it like, you guys must be crazy. But I think it's necessary for me to have both. So that way, and another thing too, when I end up doing pop-up project, either I'm selected or asked to be a part of something, or asked to submit, or I apply. Now, when I'm applying for something, I'm only going to apply for something where I can fight for it, regardless of what the person on the state would say. Not with all respect, because a lot of projects I've done in my neighborhood, so anybody's going to talk to me crazy, side eye, like this and that, I was like, oh, thank you very much. My brain is saying something else. It's like, I know this, I got this, And sometimes you need to have that kind of little thing there, and that goes to my studio practice. Once my studio practice, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But if it goes in the public, I might change it. I can alter, change, and fix things if it makes sense, if it works. That's another tool I have and stuff. So that's how I'm able to deal through the madness.
Yeah, I love that, the real flexivity between the two. Beautiful. Kim, did you want to add anything, or I can also ask one of the next?
I agree with, both of the artists, what they said. I guess as long as I have sort of a personal emotional investment in the subject, whether it's in the studio or site specific to a public artwork, well, Michael mentioned pop art, like I have to, I don't see the difference in the way I'm working in a sense, except for the physicality of things that have to happen. Things are heavier. I don't know. Mostly things are heavier. Like not heavy, man, but like heavy, like they weigh a lot. Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
Well,
Materials, yeah.
that's a good intro to one of our other questions. One of the attendees asked, were there any leaps of faith that you had to take in your career? And if so, how did you overcome those challenges?
Okay, I'll go with this.
Go for it, Kim.
Well, I always think all of this is a leap of faith. I mean,
Me too.
it's a leap of faith when I
thank you.
get up in the morning, but I just kind of remembered I did this 10 by 20 foot ellipse that's suspended with all these skies I had gathered from people from around the world. And I wanted them fused on metal, okay? And I know that Eric Cavalli was the project manager for it. It was when they used to have the CRA. Is that what it was called? Yeah. Community Redevelopment
Yeah.
Agency. And he said to me, this isn't what you wanted, by the way, for an answer, but I gotta tell you.
Go
He
for
said
it.
to me, Kim, can you really weave that metal together? And I took a piece of it and I went, sure. And it was just like that. And that to me is a leap of faith with materials. Like I just, Michael, you talked about a higher power, or did you say it? Or that's what I had, that's what I took it as.
Yes.
It's like, I truly have to believe that I am not just doing this for me. I am doing this because I was put here to go bigger.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's beautiful. Any other leaps of faith, actual or material?
I think with materials, something that you know, because there are restrictions in terms of engineering and how things need to go together and that they can't fall and hit someone in the head. People aren't supposed to climb them. You know, there are all these these things that you didn't think of. You're thinking, who would climb that? And you're like, well, somebody. Um, I found that in some of the projects, scavenging and finding things. Like I ended up in my giant medallions finding that the cap for oil trucks, or gasoline transportation, the cap on the end of those stainless steel things was the perfect center for my sculptures. So it was like, you know, it didn't have to be made, it could be scavenged in that sense, you know. So it was the perfect circle, this perfect shape that could be then added onto something that I was making. I mean, I didn't weld it, but discovery. Honestly, it is very different now than when I started. There are many more definitions, many more rules, you know, around safety or worry around things. Not that they weren't safe before, but legally, it's a very different landscape, you know, and I think that's important to recognize that. But on the other hand, drawing something or making something can be translated in a way that was not possible maybe 30 years ago or 25 even. It's now part of the system. So it has both going for it.
Yeah. One of the other things I wanted to pose to you all was just, you know, what are some of the changes that you have seen? And I think you just started there, Renee, in how the projects have managed over time, and the, you know, you've been making work several decades ago up until today, and in those changes, you know, maybe we can elaborate a little bit more on what are, in today's field, some of the things that you think are newer challenges or newer positives to working in this field, than maybe when you first started, that you're getting your head around even as everything continues to change and develop.
I mean, I feel maybe in the past, it was a place where some of us could actually work, women, marginalized people, etc., in a way we could realize projects that were maybe unrealizable in any other situation.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
I say that was very significant for me. You know, and many of the other artists that I knew at the time and still know, but we started in the field from the desire to interact and have conversations that were with known people and unknown people. But it was also a place where we could physically realize something that we couldn't afford or we weren't going to be commissioned to do by a museum, et cetera, et cetera. Some of that, of course, has changed for many of us, but it wasn't popular for a lot of artists many years ago. It wasn't a popular thing to want to do. We were a little bit oddballs, in that sense. I think now that has changed quite a bit, and very well-known artists are clamoring for working in this way. They're really interested in participating in this sphere. So I think that to me is a very big difference.
Yeah, more competitive space, perhaps, in ways.
Yeah, that is so true, because a few decades ago, everybody kind of knew each other. If we didn't know them, we know their work and stuff like that. And
That's right.
it was very, if you were in the work, whether you're doing studio work or doing public work, you were doing it because you had to, because it was sort of like, it was innate, like, I got to create, I got to do this.
Mm.
But within the last decade or so, we have an explosion of next generation going to school, MFAs, some of the top art schools in the country, stuff like that. As a career, we didn't think about it as a career, so like we felt like it was something I had to say this and create this. So it's different intentions and stuff. And so I think what's going to happen now, something's going to settle where some of those artists now it's like, oh, I'm not doing that, because they have a different thing than which they're trying to do, especially if they aren't in the galleries and museums. And they really, if that goes really well, they really don't want to do this, because it comes with a lot of other stuff. And so what was also stated before in regards to being marginalized, and then you have an opportunity to be able to have a platform that could be anybody walk by, anybody see by. I mean, that was like, it's like having your own news station, your own newspaper.
Yeah.
You be able to just like say, hey, here it is, boom, And so that was so critical, important, and actually, in some ways, that might inspire that younger generation when they were growing up to see the artwork, you know. But now it's going to be really interesting, because also too, some of the things that we were doing by hand, we don't have to touch anything now. We're so many fabricators now, and that's the part I think that will be missed, because those nuances and understanding of doing that, of hands-on stuff, like it's just like Renee was talking about, like over this studio they're doing this, because they're, like I said, everybody was fabricating, putting this stuff together, and so the future would it feel like it's going to be still, it could be some great work, but it may not have the other parts of that experience, that energy stuff, that the nuances and the little quirky things that we have to work through. Oh, this is not working. We find a way to make it work. Okay, now it's working now. So as opposed now it's going to be like, so manufacturers, like, it's be off the assembly line. And so hopefully there'll be a balance between a little bit of the old and some of the new. And that's where the innovation will come in. If it's only just the new stuff only, we're in trouble. And if it's only the old stuff, that become obsolete. Trying to find a middle ground of both of them, that's where we're going to be able to keep the energy and the interest and the quality.
And I think it's so true what you're saying. And it's also that there's so many ways to make things in people's studios now that they didn't work that way then. There are a lot of, I think, artists who work in their studios really differently. Computers and really elaborate work that's digitized, and so it suits in some ways this new system, because they are already working that way.
Yeah, I was thinking kind of like buyer beware, like beware of the seduction of some of these methods, like laser cutting. Get that person, they're gonna laser cut. I'm just gonna like put some stuff out there and they're gonna do it for me. And I think that lack of personalization that happens when a fabricator is really doing all the stuff, art is good because of that sense of struggle and who's doing the struggle,
Mhm.
So I just think that idea that some of these are such cool processes and stuff, and then people are trying to like apply an idea onto it instead of having an idea and really honing in on letting time develop what that would end up looking like. It's really different than trying to slap an idea on a process, you know?
There was a project that Daniel Martinez and Roger White and myself worked on the East Coast. And we actually, for the reason that you speak of, we weren't allowed to make them ourselves, but we hired 3 different fabricators to make them differently.
Oh, cool.
Knew that it would all be kind of the same if it was only one person.
Right.
So we used 3 different kind of places, and those people work with slightly different handling and technique, and we could work at each of those places. We went there and worked with them, but it allowed for the project to look kind of different because of that. So that's another choice, you know, like
Yeah.
who do you work with, you know, and how much can you do with that fabricator, you know?
Pat, I think that you and I might need to convene a little workshop with these 3 to add to our recommendations on policies. I say that jokingly, but not really, because I think there's been so many things that you each have shared tonight that, you know, one of the tenets, one of the components of this PAiD program is working with an artist council to develop policy recommendations and to further how we work. And I've heard even things that you have shared today and tonight that I think could absolutely be part of that around, you know, the fostering of connection and community, the building of support systems, the relationships with fabricators and materials, and the potential for chance and happenstance and connection in these ways that you know, I think there's an opportunity through some of the work that the PAiD program is doing to start to kind of build that relationship in a new and a different way, in a 2024 way. But it's encouraging to see and hear from each of you how profound that was in your development and growth, to think about how we are fostering that in this program today for another generation. So that's not really a question to you, Pat, but I'm happy to continue that dialogue and to see that as we close this workshop series out, to see this conversation lead towards that next conversation. And the experience and the work that you each have done add into that. We only have a few minutes left tonight, and I just wanted to offer each of you a moment to close in closing, if there were things you wanted to elaborate more on, reflect more on about what has been. Well, I'll leave it in the hands of one of our final questions from one of our community members tonight, which was about a pivotal or catalytic moments in your careers that maybe set up a trajectory that you didn't expect. Was there, if there are anything in that space, or if not, if there are any, the word that I'm trying to come up with just flew out of my mind, words of encouragement or support you might want to offer to this group tonight that are with us. Well, we can leave it there. Go ahead, Kim. Looks like you were ready to
Oh,
say.
I know. Well, you know, it's because I mean, I have many pivotal moments in a way, so I guess I won't, you know, limit it or something, but I guess what I often think when I'm working on these projects with different communities, I think this thing like, how did I get so lucky to be here? Like with this group that I would never know in any other kind of circumstance. How did I get lucky to just get in these unusual situations, locationally or because of the group or because of the situation. It's just a marvel to me, and it's really based on doing public or community work.
Yeah.
I can concur with Kim. It is bewildering that to feel like I got to work with these people and this material, and they're trusting me. I mean, I've also been invited many times to oversee other artists on projects by groups, and that has been amazing because I could give back in that I could put younger and other artists in the position to make something. And so to be fortunate enough to be entrusted with that has been extraordinary. So not even just what I make, but also that I get to facilitate others in this area. I don't know how that happened. I really don't, but it's been fortunate, yeah, and with several different instances. So I can say that. But pivotal, I don't know how to answer that exactly. I do want to say, I think for me, the idea when you bring up faith, it's the faith in oneself too, to really say, this is what I want to do. And I can do it, because there are artists who don't want to work this way. And I think you have to know yourself, and you have to develop your own practice as an artist, and begin to be solid in that before I think you can take a step where you're subjected to bombardment, as it were. So it's really important to ground yourself and really know what are you as an artist? Who are you as an artist? What makes your art? Makes you want to make things or think about things or put them out in the world?
Thanks, Renee. I really appreciate that. Go ahead, Michael.
I would say the first project that I shared, because if I thought it was normal at the time that there was artists around that were helpful and they were doing the process, and I was assisting, and I was like working here, working there, and so by the time I got the opportunity to do this, it was interesting. Like I knew a good number of people, but when I did that project, I was busy in LA doing a lot of different stuff, teaching, working with artist groups and stuff like that. And for me to leave LA, big old LA, go to Kansas City, Missouri, people start talking like, "Man, you're doing all right. You're doing about." I'm just going to Kansas City to do a project. I had to leave LA, so it was kind of fun and also good to kind of be able to have that kind of experience. But what I realized now was that wasn't a norm. That was a moment in time, that I was able to catch that at that moment. Because if I came later, it would be a different experience, and who knows where I would be, at this point. Still be doing art, possibly public art, but I would say because of those foundational pieces with these different artists community that was supporting each other was very pivotal in that. So yeah, I would say that the first piece, because that's why I was able to do fabrication with instruments, because of Charles. Go right to the studio. This is how you do it, Mike. He's like, so that was a beautiful thing.
Well, if I've heard anything, it's been to believe in oneself and to grab onto opportunities when they come, when one feels can take them. And I think that's an amazing advice. And the folks who've been coming tonight and who've come to this workshop series, I think is started on that journey of seeing an opportunity to engage and grabbing hold of that. And I want to say thank you so much to the participants who have come continuously or as they can to these workshops, because I think that's part of that legacy of seizing an opportunity and moving it. Pat, would you like to share anything?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. So I just wanted to say a couple things. The first thing is that, this is the last of this particular series. We are doing another one next year. But this is such important work for us. It's part of a program. The idea is that, we really are trying. I mean, we keep saying we're trying to break down barriers, but it's true. We want to be able to have this be a field that people can feel that they can participate in and come in. And so, by having this series, which broke down all the different aspects of public art making, were so important for people. But this is such a great group here, and I'm fans of all of you for sure, your work. And, you're great, accomplished people. And I think it's really aspirational for people to be able to hear from you and to be able to say, oh, I can have a sense of community as an artist. And, there, all of you talked about that sense of community when you were just starting out, but, there's communities of people now who are just starting out, so it's there. And so I just wanted to, encourage people that if this is something that you're interested in, to, to participate, because it is important. And I'd also like to do a plug for our call that we have out right now, and also to all of you three. If you know any, artists that are, Uptown now have been primarily studio artists, and they haven't had that opportunity yet to do their own public art. Please share that we have this call out for apprentices, because that is an amazing opportunity for artists to be mentored and trained on every aspect of public art making while they're doing a project. And it is a great opportunity. So just thanks. My big thanks to all of you. And yeah, we're happy, and we look forward to doing more next year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Pat. This has been an honor and a privilege to be able to support the community in delivering these workshops, and to be able to dialogue with folks like we have here tonight. I have been inspired by hearing your work. I agree, Pat. I wanted to also say, like, Renee, when you were talking about that cohort in Metro, I was like, let's make the apprenticeship. Can we have them all live together? Can we give them an architect? Can we? I think that there is a potential and a movement, and the funding that LA County Arts and Culture secured for this with the Mellon Foundation is supporting such a huge investment in serving this community of artists, particularly underrepresented artists in this field. And I look forward to how this program can continue to develop that through things like tonight, through dialogues with each of you. I hope that we can perhaps still have the goodwill to reach out to you again, to maybe come meet some of our artists in the future, to bridge, some connections between the cohort that is going to be selected for the apprentices. But again, thank you so much. And we will look forward to sharing more information with our attendees about the next session of workshops in 2025. But for now, the open call for the apprentices early 25 will also be the next open call for the Artist Council. So if you are interested in developing policy that can change how artists are supported in this field, join us, apply for the Artist Council. We work across so many different topics to craft real, clear, actionable policy changes that the county can then implement and look through and support to better support artists. So those opportunities are coming up too. But pivoting back to a big, huge thank you to Michael, Kim, Renee, to Allie, and to Pat for coming and joining us in each of these over the last couple of months.
Thank you for your generosity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Good night, everyone. Signing off.
All right, good night.
Good night. Bye.